thank you, Saurabh, for joining us today on Let's Talk Business series by RealtyNXT.
Thank you, Kritika. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
So before I start, asking about Runwal Group, I really want to know from you is the Maharashtra government reduced the stamp duty on property registration from 5 to 2%, and that offer ends today, that is 31st March. So do you think this will impact the pattern and behavior of home buying?
Uh, I think you started the interview off perfectly because that is sort of the hot topic that everybody is discussing for the last few months and definitely today. And for this financial year, especially Q1 and Q2 were extremely difficult for developers. People were not moving out because of restrictions, and sales velocities had really slumped. So kudos to the government for being very active and taking that active step to reduce stamp duty from 5% initially to 2%. And we saw the immediate impact of that with sales hitting record numbers in November, December. And as an organization, we've also seen growth in Q3 and Q4 because of that reduced stamp duty.
Right.
Mostly because there was a lot of pent up demand, and because of this, it sort of activated buyers who were on the fence and gave them a need for action. So that urgency got created. So for buyers who were saying, I'll wait and I'll watch and I'll wait for prices to drop further. For them, it was a huge carrot to finally make that decision with a time-bound incentive. So because of that, Q3 and Q4 have been very good in terms of sales velocity. But like you rightly said, the industry is sort of waiting and watching to see what happens in the next financial year, because as this incentive is removed, buyers might become more wary again. And once the pent-up demand goes away, the sales velocity will be more dependent on market fundamentals. So, will jobs come back? Will wages be will wages go back to what they were at pre-COVID levels? So that will become a huge macro factor that will drive further demand. So I think what the industry is trying to lobby is, that stamp duty, the waivers should get extended so that there is a smooth continuation of sales velocity through this year, here as well.
So the sales velocity that you have spoken about, the recent report which we saw from Knight Frank, they had reported that 2019 saw total sales of 67,863 units, whereas registration in 2020 have comfortably been close to the last year numbers, that was 65,272 units. So do you think that housing sales is nearly back to pre-COVID levels?
So I think, like you said, right, Q3 and Q4 were definitely anomalies, and they saw a huge jump in demand, like you said, because of the stamp duty reduction, because mortgage rates were an all-time low, and also developers had reduced prices. So all these factors sort of amalgamated together caused the right environment to buy, and because of that, there was an anomalous jump in sales velocity. But to actively say that it's back to pre-COVID levels would be very difficult before we wait and watch what happens in the next 2 quarters, as we will actually see the impact that COVID has had on wage reduction and job losses, and whether people feel comfortable going forward with the same purchasing power that they've had in the past. But having said that, I think we're fairly optimistic because a lot of the overhang inventory has been consumed. So now the supply is also less. So developers and buyers are well positioned to meet the demand supply in the market.
What is the growth that you are expecting in 2021 when it comes to affordable and luxury housing?
And that's a great question. I think it really just depends on what we use as the benchmark for growth. If we use FY 2021 as the benchmark for growth, I think I'd say the growth will be muted, but it'll be steady. And it'll be interesting to look at luxury and affordable segments separately, because even during COVID, we've seen a dichotomy in demand for luxury housing, where people are opting for larger homes because of COVID and the increased time they're spending at home. But in affordable, we're also seeing the flip side, where there's a lot of first-time home buyers entering the market, and for them, ticket size has become very lucrative. So in fact, smaller homes are going off the shelf faster in more affordable micro markets out within the MMR region. So if you look at Thane, Kalyan, Dombivli area, smaller ticket sizes are also selling at a much faster rate. So I think to answer your question for the next year, I think affordable segment will definitely see robust growth as we recover further from the post-pandemic era and people get back into jobs, wages are restored.
Hmm.
That inherent need for a home has been created very strongly because of the pandemic. You know, it is the one thing that's become sacrosanct. So there'll be two factors playing into it. One is uh, a desire to shift from rental housing to ownership, which is also already fairly high in India, but to have the security of home as an asset will be extremely valuable.
Hmm.
And also to secure your space will be there, as well as income steadiness comes in. That ability to move that income into an asset such as a home will also, steady out the demand in affordable housing.
So, do you think people right now are like, we have noticed a trend during the lockdown and during the phase when the construction were paused, people were buying more of ready to move in houses, right? And they are
Absolutely.
preferring more because due to the pandemic, what the consequences has been. So, do you think in this year, 2021, we'll see the same trend following, that people are more towards buying the ready to move in housing in comparison to under construction houses?
No, that's a very good question. I think there's a two-part answer to that.
Hmm.
Um, there's an affinity towards ready to move in housing because there is less risk on ensuring that there is project completion.
Yeah.
Once OCs receive, buyers know that the likelihood that they don't get their home on time is extremely low. And if the price difference between an under construction property and a ready to move in property is not very high, in a market like Mumbai where you have abundant supply, so you'll have properties at all different stages of construction,
Hmm.
ready to move in inventory might see a sort of faster absorption, but also a higher price point. But we've also noticed that for branded developers, where there is inherent brand value and customer trust, they
Yeah.
are also choosing to go in for a under construction property
Hmm.
and sort of secure a home 3 to 4 years down the line, as long as they are faithful in the fact that the home construction will not get stopped because of any reason with the said developer.
So good you brought the word branded developers, because I've been asking to all my developers that we have noticed that people are relying more on the branded developers in comparison to any other developers when it comes to a trust factor. And
Absolutely.
because due to this pandemic, people have noticed there have been a lot of cases where the company has gone bankrupt, where the company is not able to deliver the certain products or the amenities, whatever has been promised. So would you say that in few years there'll be few branded developers only left in Indian real estate market who would be, ruling this market as per se?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question because real estate in India is fairly fragmented, and there is a long tail of developers present in all micro markets. I think Mumbai alone would have, or Maharashtra alone would have around 8,000 developers
Yeah,
because of how hyper local real estate is in nature. So each micro market can have multiple developers purely because it's hyper local in nature. Um, but like you rightly said, because of the cash flow problems that COVID has created and a new sense of organization that is coming into the industry, there is definitely consolidation wherein more cash-rich developers or branded developers are taking over projects of developers that are currently struggling. And
yeah.
also, since customer faith lies more strongly with branded developers, there is a trend towards that. So I'd say in the future there will continue to be several developers, but
Hmm.
industry will trend towards consolidation.
So what is the growth plan of Runwal developers right now? What can we expect ahead now from the brand?
So we've always focused on growth for the last 30 to 40 years, and our ambitions are not only pan India but always global. But we shall continue to go one step at a time. And the ambitions are sort of split between residential, retail, affordable, luxury. But looking to the next year, our focus is on delivering the existing projects and executing them, precisely and promising and delivering more than what is promised to the customers. One. The second is exploring new markets and focusing on acquisition of prime land for both residential and retail projects as well. as well as exploring, expansion beyond the Mumbai micro market. So this year itself, we had a very successful launch in Pune. So trying to see further in Maharashtra and outside of Maharashtra, which markets are where we can use our strength and our brand name and make a formidable entry.
So tell me, now we are noticing that developers are also moving towards the warehousing, right? Because we saw during the pandemic the huge demand of the e-commerce websites. The retail had got a good growth because of that.
Yeah.
So do you think developers will be including more of warehousing? They'll be getting into more of the warehousing segment now because of this kind of certain change we are seeing, and we know by now that technology is the future, and this might go ahead more in this retail segment.
Definitely, I think the pandemic has essentially accelerated a lot of the trends that we were seeing, and acted as a booster shot for e-commerce,
Yeah.
which then has ripple effects towards increased warehousing infrastructure and related services. But currently, I think there's a very niche group of, I'd not say niche, but a smaller set of players that are focused and developing specialization in warehousing. And the market size, I would say, is fairly small, but is one which is set for growth. So we personally, as a company, have not, set this year as our foray into warehousing. But I'm very much bullish on how it will perform as a segment in or an asset class in the next few years.
So according to you, what would be the trends we can notice in retail segment in this year 2021?
I think retail is
Apart
probably,
from warehouse, of course.
yeah, no, I wouldn't even count warehousing in retail. I'm thinking more around high street retail and more shopping mall focused retail.
Yeah.
I think that asset class has been the most challenged by the pandemic, purely because of consumer sentiment and also because of physical restrictions on travel. So that area will definitely shape up differently in 2021. And I think that will happen along and is happening along a few different aspects. One is, the format of agreements between tenants and landlords will change, wherein people might prefer more or are preferring more revenue-based agreements versus a minimum guarantee.
Right.
But also the shape of retail is changing in the sense that it's becoming more omni-channel or omnipresent. So customers sort of do want a physical touch point in their retail experience, but are bolstering it with an online experience. So retail and online will become sort of synonymous, with sort of become complementary to each other. And stores might change in terms of formats and sizes. So, might not require, every store won't require to carry as much inventory as before. You can just come in the store, understand the product, and then shop online. Also we'll see a foray of new type of brands into the retail market. So whereas some brands that may perish might get replaced by new brands that are currently only online but need to further grow offline and to establish themselves as brand. And this is a trend that has been seen, in more developed markets like US, China, and UK, where digitally native brands are opening up stores and expanding their store base to sort of reduce their customer acquisition cost online and just expand um, in a more organic and physical way. But yeah, I think all of that is dependent on how we see cases increase or decrease in the next few months.
Of course. But do you think, like the mall experience that we used to have before, now things have changed. We have to maintain social distancing. We have to make sure we are not sitting around and eating now, like how we used to do before. So, do you
Yeah.
think malls also with time has to adapt some kind of new technology or experience for the retailers to come back, or for the customers to come back to gain a different experience apart from just shopping?
No, definitely. I think, especially in the short term, like you said, the focus um, will be more around security and safety, ensuring that protocols are followed and social distancing is maintained, because that is the utmost priority. So a little bit of the fun elements of sitting around and just walking in sort of fade away. especially with entertainment like cinema halls being shut.
Yeah.
And like you said, in the long term, I think retail will become a mix of a lifestyle experience. So it'll be more focused on dining out, as well as cinemas, entertainment options,
Hmm.
buttressed along with the shopping experience, which will have to become more interactive and personal to essentially create a value add of visiting a store in person versus just being able to shop online.
True. So technology has been playing a greater role after pandemic, or we have noticed during pre and post COVID era that technology that was not that much adopted in real estate, especially, it's been now looked being people are now being more open about it, especially when it comes to Proptech companies also. So
Yeah.
what is your take when it comes to how real estate market can change or the landscape can change with the help of technology, and how Runwal, I know it's a pretty long question, but how Runwal developers are making a point to adopt technology, and also how are they collaborating with PropTech companies?
Um, so yeah, a lot of parts to that question.
Let's
I
take it
think
from the first. Like, do
yeah.
you think how the real estate landscape is changing due to technology?
No, I think that personally also I'm you know being part of my age group and as a result of my education, etc. I'm very pro adoption of new technology and implementing of systems that can be done digitally with minimal amounts of human intervention because it just creates a smooth workflow. But also very often we see that in recessionary environments. Spends on digital is sort of the first few things that companies cut. But
Hmm.
the pandemic has actually forced us to wake up and see how we can adopt these technologies to better the business.
Yeah.
And if you think of real estate, technology can be adopted, across the value chain. So from first point of customer interaction to marketing to pre-sales, sales, construction, documentation, procurement, etc.
Hmm.
And there's a wide variety of prop tech companies sort of catering to each.
Yeah.
I think personally, my focus would be around the areas of construction, customer management, and sales,
Hmm.
ensuring that the customer can have a seamless experience. So in real estate, customer experience is usually not prioritized,
Yeah.
and is extremely low if you speak to customers across the industry. So using technology to allow customers to sort of track the progress of the project,
Hmm.
or to be able to directly communicate with the customer relationships team, or be able to view a product online, or
Hmm.
to see the status of their booking. Create a seamless end-to-end customer portal becomes valuable. Similarly, for channel partners,
Yeah.
ensuring that the channel partner management can happen online with minimal intervention also becomes smooth. And then internally looking at processes,
Hmm.
making sure that there's a smooth workflow. So, for example, if one customer file is created, that goes end to end from a pre-sales point of view till from basically from cradle to grave in an online format,
Yeah.
with with limited manual intervention. And then, obviously from a construction point of view, there are a lot of new technologies coming up that have limited adoption in terms of big data, 3D printing, automation. But I think one step at a time, even if we just see use of technology for monitoring
Hmm.
and tracking of progress
Hmm.
without requirement of Excel sheets, that itself is a step up and a more smooth workflow going forward.
True. So we have also noticed there's a pattern of mandate selling, which has been given to other agencies to drive sales to gain velocity, right? So do you think this trend is here to stay, because a lot of developers are now limiting or keeping their marketing team small and putting it across to other agencies to run their marketing, be digital wise or be this marketing on foot ground? So what do you think, this mandate selling is going to stay in Indian real estate? And do you think this is the way to go ahead for the developers?
I think that's a tough question. Definitely, that trend is prevalent where service providers are sort of taking ownership of the sales and marketing process
Yeah.
of a lot of developers. But this, and I think this will just vary case to case. It might be a trend that is to stay like a professional service provider, but it comes down to, you know, for projects if the where the margins are extremely thin, then adding a 1, 2, or 3%, whatever is the cost of the service provider, might become extremely difficult. So I guess the questions developers will ask themselves in the next 1 or 2 years is what is the innate IP
Yeah.
or the value proposition of a service provider uh, above and beyond uh, flexible manpower that they offer. So they definitely help reduce fixed costs, but is the margin that is charged by them
Mm.
justified?
Very
Uh,
true.
so I don't think I have a definite answer for you, but that's just sort of the thought process that I can.
So that's nicely put across, because very few people tiptoe around it, because I understand mandate selling is there, it's happening around, but as you said, it needs to be, I think, seen properly by the developer front, that
Yeah,
is really helping them, because I understand you're giving a certain amount to them to make your sales happen. But I think if the focus can be also, that's just up my perspective, on your own marketing team, I think it can be achieved or gained. But then again, it's completely up to you and the developer guys to understand
exactly.
how it's going to help in the longer run, I guess.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So earlier, as you were saying about Thane and Kalyan, I wanted to know, according to you, which are the most lucrative catchment areas in MMR region when it comes to affordable housing?
Um, I think that's a tough one. Actually, as an organization, we are also, looking at the certain factors to identify which are the most lucrative micro markets. But based on my limited knowledge of the areas in which we have experience, um, we are seeing that Kalyan Dombivli is a very quickly growing micro market, and we have large townships there which are seeing fairly large volumes of month on month, as the people in that area and the income classes of that strata is growing. Similarly, Thane, Mulund, Kandivali, Vadala,
Yeah.
all these micro markets in and around Mumbai are also showing very robust growth and are growing faster than sort of the luxury pockets in South Mumbai.
Okay. So in this last segment, this question I asked from everyone, as you would have known, that the question is, why do you think it's important to optimize automated marketing system to boost sales?
I think that is extremely important because I think real estate as an industry is very nascent in the way we use technology to optimize customer interactions and the way we process data to understand how it is that we can sell better, and marketing is the first touch point for that. So I think as developers, we're all looking for solutions that can help us get better at one, identifying the customer base, two, engaging the customer base, three, ensuring that the customer base is walking into your site, and four, converting the customer base.
Hmm.
So how can the different technology tools be used to better each of these four steps, in terms of remarketing, in terms of SMS churning, in
Hmm.
terms of identifying their journey through different social media platforms via Google, improve targeting.
Hmm.
And if an AI sort of engine can come in and give us insights on what is my next customer going to look like, or how much money should I spend on what type of customer,
Hmm.
those would be incredibly valuable insights, which I think as developers we do not have at that level of depth as other industries, as technology and e-commerce already have with them.
True. Yeah. So thank you so much, Saurabh, to joining us in this Let's Talk Business series. It was lovely to have you here and to see a great young leader in real estate. It was as a fresh perspective for our viewers also. And I'm sure you had the fun to come on this platform as well.
Yeah, no, really great questions asked by you, Kritika. Thanks for having me on the show. Uh, your questions also make me introspect and make sure that I'm thinking in the correct way. So uh, always happy to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much.